March 16th, 2026, 4:47 local time. Strait of Hormuz. A radar operator aboard HMS Diamond stares at his screen. 8 contacts, fast movers, bearing 045, inbound. He has 11 seconds to classify them before the automated defense system demands a human decision. 11 seconds to determine whether those contacts are commercial aircraft deviating from course, Iranian military jets on a patrol pattern, or something far worse. He classifies them at the 9-second mark. Anti-ship cruise missiles, 8 of them. Closing at Mach 0.9. Time to impact, 94 seconds. What happens in the next 22 minutes will determine whether the Royal Navy suffers its first combat loss since the Falklands War, whether a coalition mine clearance operation collapses, and whether Iran succeeds in fracturing the most significant Anglo-American naval partnership since the Second Gulf War. I'm your host at Navy Battlefront, where we break down the most critical naval operations shaping global power. Today, we are reconstructing an engagement that most of the British public still doesn't fully understand. Not because the information isn't available, but because the information that is available doesn't match the story Downing Street once told. This is Operation Corridor Restore. The night Britain sent warships into a minefield, and Iran answered with missiles. To understand why the Royal Navy was operating inside the Strait of Hormuz on March 16th, you have to go back 5 months, to the decisions that made this confrontation inevitable. October 2025. Tehran begins what Western intelligence agencies initially classify as a routine naval exercise. IRGC fast attack craft surge into the strait. Dozens of small boats conducting high-speed runs through the shipping lanes. The Pentagon watches. CENTCOM logs the activity. No one raises an alarm. This was a mistake, because mixed in with those fast attack craft were 4 IRGC mine-laying vessels, operating at night, running without AIS transponders, each carrying between 40 and 60 EM-52 rising mines, Chinese-designed, Iranian-manufactured, capable of sitting dormant on the seabed for months before activating. Over 11 nights in October, Iran seeded approximately 240 mines across the narrowest section of the Strait of Hormuz. The mining pattern was precise, not random. It targeted the 2 deepwater channels that supertankers use to transit the strait, each channel barely 2 nautical miles wide. Western intelligence didn't detect the mining operation in real time. The reasons are now the subject of a classified after-action review, but sources familiar with the assessment point to 3 failures. First, satellite coverage of the strait had been redirected to monitor Chinese naval activity near Taiwan, following a spike in PLA Navy exercises in September. Second, the IRGC vessels operated during windows when overhead ISR assets were unavailable, suggesting Iran had mapped American satellite schedules. Third, and most damaging, Bahrain-based naval intelligence analysts had flagged unusual IRGC small boat activity in their October 9th summary, but the report was categorized as routine and never escalated to CENTCOM headquarters in Tampa. By early November, the mines were in place. Iran had effectively weaponized the world's most important oil choke point. 21% of global petroleum passes through the Strait of Hormuz daily. That's roughly 21 million barrels. The first indication that something was wrong came on November 19th. The Marshall Islands flagged tanker Pacific Endurance struck a mine 17 nautical miles southeast of Bandar Abbas. The explosion tore a 40-foot gash below the waterline. The crew evacuated. The ship didn't sink, but it couldn't move. It sat there for 6 days, bleeding crude oil into the strait, while the world's shipping insurers recalculated their risk models overnight. Lloyd's of London raised war risk premiums for Hormuz transit by 400% within 48 hours. A second vessel, the Liberian-flagged bulk carrier Astor Fortune, hit a mine on December 3rd. This time, the ship went down. 14 crew members were rescued. 2 were not. Commercial shipping began rerouting. Tankers that had transited Hormuz for decades without incident were now diverting around the Cape of Good Hope, adding 14 days and approximately $2 million per voyage. Oil prices surged past $130 per barrel by Christmas. The global economy was hemorrhaging, and Tehran had achieved this without firing a single shot at a military vessel. Washington's initial response was diplomatic. The State Department issued warnings. The UN Security Council convened. Russia vetoed a resolution demanding Iran clear the mines. China abstained. The diplomatic track died within weeks. By January 2026, the Pentagon began planning a military option. The concept was straightforward in theory, extraordinarily dangerous in execution. Sweep a corridor through the minefield wide enough for commercial shipping to resume. A cleared channel. A single navigable path through the densest mine threat the U.S. Navy had faced since Operation Earnest Will in 1988. The problem was resources. The U.S. Navy's mine countermeasures fleet had been hollowed out over 2 decades of budget cuts and strategic neglect. The entire MCM force consisted of 11 Avenger-class minesweepers, several of which were in maintenance or deployed to the Western Pacific. The Navy had invested heavily in the littoral combat ship's mine countermeasures mission package, but testing had revealed persistent reliability issues with the remote mine hunting system. CENTCOM needed allies. Specifically, allies with mine-sweeping capability and the political will to operate under fire. That's where Britain entered the equation. In late January, American and British defense officials held a series of meetings, first at the Pentagon, then at the Ministry of Defense in London. The proposal was direct. The Royal Navy would contribute its mine countermeasures vessels currently forward deployed to Bahrain as part of the UK's Standing Gulf presence, to a joint clearance operation. In exchange, the United States would provide the escort screen, Aegis-equipped destroyers and cruisers to protect the sweepers from Iranian retaliation. The British contribution would center on 4 vessels, HMS Chiddingfold and HMS Middleton, both Hunt-class mine countermeasures vessels, along with their support ship RFA Cardigan Bay. But London pushed for something more, a statement of commitment, a signal that Britain was not merely providing auxiliaries, but leading from the front. On February 12th, the Ministry of Defense announced that HMS Queen Elizabeth would deploy to the Gulf as the centerpiece of Carrier Strike Group 26. The 65,000-ton aircraft carrier would carry a mixed air wing of F-35B, Lightning II fighters, and Merlin helicopters. Accompanying her, the Type 45 destroyer HMS Diamond, the Type 23 frigate HMS Richmond, and an Astute-class submarine whose identity remains classified. The deployment was the largest Royal Navy task group sent to the Gulf since 2003. Tehran's reaction was immediate. The IRGC's naval commander, Rear Admiral Alireza Tangsiri, publicly stated that any attempt to clear Iranian mines would be treated as an act of war. Iranian state television broadcast footage of Noor anti-ship missile batteries being positioned along the coastline of Qeshm Island, the long, narrow island that dominates the northern edge of the strait. The Noor missile is Iran's license-built variant of the Chinese C-802, subsonic, sea-skimming, 480-kilogram warhead, range of approximately 120 kilometers. Not the most sophisticated anti-ship weapon in the world, but effective. And Iran had dozens of launchers positioned in hardened coastal revetments. British and American planners knew the Noor threat intimately. In 2006, Hezbollah had used a C-802 to strike the Israeli corvette Wir NS Hanit during the Lebanon War, killing 4 sailors and nearly sinking the vessel. The missile worked. It had proven combat history. And now Iran had batteries of them aimed directly at the planned clearance corridor. Operation Corridor Restore was approved on March 2, 2026. The operational plan called for a phased clearance of a 2 nautical mile wide swept channel running southeast through the strait. The Hunt-class minesweepers would work in pairs, using their Seafox expendable mine disposal systems to identify and neutralize mines individually. Each Seafox drone could locate a mine on the seabed, transmit video to the minesweeper's operations room, and then detonate a shaped charge to destroy it. The process was methodical and agonizingly slow. Each mine required between 20 and 40 minutes to locate, classify, and destroy. With an estimated 240 mines in the field, planners calculated the full clearance operation would take between 3 and 4 weeks. During that entire period, the minesweepers would be operating at speeds of 4 to 6 knots, following predetermined search patterns, essentially stationary targets in one of the most heavily surveilled waterways on Earth. The first phase began on March 8th. HMS Chiddingfold and HMS Middleton entered the minefield at dawn, with USS Laboon, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, positioned 3 nautical miles to their south, and HMS Diamond Holding Station 4 nautical miles to the northeast. The carrier HMS Queen Elizabeth remained further back, approximately 60 nautical miles south in the Gulf of Oman, her F-35Bs maintaining a continuous combat air patrol over the strait. For 7 days, the operation proceeded without incident. By March 15th, the sweepers had cleared 47 confirmed mines from the eastern portion of the corridor. The swept channel was taking shape. Intelligence analysts noted that Iranian coastal radar activity had increased significantly, but there were no hostile actions. Some planners began to believe Tehran's threats were bluster. This assessment was wrong. What coalition intelligence didn't know was that Iran had been tracking the precise positions of every coalition vessel for days, using a network of fishing boats equipped with concealed radar transponders. The fishing boats, operating legally in Iranian territorial waters, relayed real-time positional data to IRGC command on Qeshm Island. The coalition's electronic surveillance had focused on military frequency communications and missed the low-power VHF transmissions the fishing boats were using, signals that blended into normal maritime radio traffic. March 16th, 4:30 local time. The minesweepers are conducting a night clearance evolution in the narrowest section of the corridor. HMS Chiddingfold has just deployed a Seafox drone toward a contact on the seabed. HMS Middleton is 800 meters to her east. USS Laboon holds station to the south, her SPY-1D radar rotating continuously. HMS Diamond sits to the northeast, her Samson radar providing a complementary coverage arc. At 4:41, a signals intelligence operator aboard USS Laboon detects a burst transmission from Qeshm Island. Duration: 1.4 seconds. Encrypted. The transmission is logged, but not immediately flagged. IRGC communications activity had been high for days, and the watch team had been processing dozens of similar intercepts. 6 minutes later, at 4:47, everything changes. HMS Diamond's Samson radar, the most advanced naval air defense radar in the Royal Navy, detects 8 fast-moving contacts emerging from behind the terrain shadow of Qeshm Island. The contacts are low, extremely low. Altitude: 15 meters above the sea surface. Speed: 295 meters per second. Course: directly toward the minesweeping formation. The classification: Noor anti-ship cruise missiles. HMS Diamond's combat management system transitions to full automatic engagement mode within 4 seconds. The ship's Sea Viper missile system, built around the Aster-15 and Aster-30 interceptors, begins calculating firing solutions. The first pair of Aster-15 missiles leave their vertical launch cells at 0447 and 18 seconds. The interval between detection and first launch, 11 seconds. Simultaneously, the officer of the deck aboard USS Laboon receives the air defense alert over the Coalition Tactical Data Link. Laboon's SPY-1D radar acquires the inbound missiles 3 seconds after Diamond. the Aegis combat system automatically generates engagement solutions. Laboon launches two SM-2 Block 3C missiles at 4:47 and 26 seconds. 8 Noor missiles are now crossing the strait at wave-top height. 4 Royal Navy Aster-15 missiles and 2 American SM-2s are racing to meet them. The engagement geometry is brutal. The Noor missiles are approaching from the northeast, using the coastline of Qeshm Island to mask their launch signature for as long as possible. The minesweepers, HMS Chiddingfold and HMS Middleton, are directly in the threat axis. Neither vessel has meaningful air defense capability. The Hunt class was designed to find and kill mines, not to survive a missile attack. Their only protection is the escort screen. At 04:48 and 2 seconds, the first Aster-15 intercepts. A direct hit on the lead Noor missile at a range of 9 kilometers from HMS Diamond. The warhead detonates, and the missile disintegrates into a shower of burning debris that falls into the sea. The second Aster-15 destroys another Noor 4 seconds later. Then the third. USS Laboon's first SM-2 connects at 04:48 and 14 seconds, eliminating a fourth missile that had been tracking toward the southern edge of the formation. 4 missiles down, 4 still inbound. HMS Diamond launches 2 more Aster-15S. The first strikes its target at 4:48 and 28 seconds. The second misses. The Noor missile's terminal maneuver, a slight jinking pattern programmed into the seeker head, is enough to throw off the interceptor. The Aster detonates in proximity, showering the Noor with fragmentation, but the missile continues flying, damaged, wobbling, but still airborne. Laboon's second SM-2 destroys the 6th Noor at 4:48 and 31 seconds. 2 missiles remain. One is the damaged Noor, its flight path erratic, descending gradually toward the sea. The second is clean and tracking. Its seeker appears to have locked onto HMS Chiddingfold. HMS Diamond fires again, her 6th Aster-15 of the engagement. This time the interceptor finds its target cleanly. The 7th Noor explodes 11 kilometers from the minesweeper. 1 missile left, the damaged one. It's losing altitude, its guidance system likely degraded by the near-miss fragmentation. But it's still moving at nearly Mach 0.8, and it's inside 5 kilometers of the formation. USS Laboon's Phalanx CIWS activates. The 20mm Gatling gun spins up, tracking the erratic contact. At 2.3 kilometers, it opens fire. 400 rounds per second. The tracer stream reaches out across the dark water. The Noor hits the surface of the Gulf 400 meters from HMS Chiddingfold. Whether it was destroyed by the phalanx or simply lost aerodynamic stability is still debated in the after-action reports. The result is the same. A column of white water erupts from the impact point, close enough that crew members on Chiddingfold's upper deck are hit by spray. Total engagement time, 1 minute and 44 seconds. 8 missiles launched, 7 confirmed intercepts, 1 probable kill by either CIWS or structural failure. 0 coalition casualties, 0 hits. But the crisis wasn't over. For the next 20 minutes, the coalition formation held its position inside the strait. This was the decision that would later generate the most controversy in the parliamentary review. The minesweepers had an active Seafox drone deployed on the seabed. Recovering or abandoning it would cost hours of clearance progress and potentially leave an uncharted mine in the swept corridor. The on-scene commander, Captain James Harrington aboard HMS Diamond, made the call to stay. His reasoning, as later described to the Defense Select Committee, if the formation withdrew every time Iran launched missiles, the clearance operation would never be completed. The escorts had proven they could defend the formation. The air defense ammunition expenditure, 6 Aster-15S and 2 SM-2S, was significant but sustainable. Diamond carried 48 Sea Viper missiles. Laboon carried 96 cells. They could absorb several more salvos before reaching critical thresholds. But the decision carried enormous risk. If Iran launched a second salvo while the escorts were reloading, the response time would be compressed. And if Iran escalated to larger weapons, the Khaliji-E-Fars ballistic anti-ship missile, for instance, which has a flight profile that neither Sea Viper nor SM-2 is optimized to engage, the calculus would change dramatically. Tehran did not launch a second salvo. Intelligence analysts later assessed that the 8-missile strike was intended as a signaling action, not a sustained offensive. Iran wanted to demonstrate capability and willingness to fire on coalition warships without crossing the threshold into a full naval engagement that would invite American carrier aviation into the fight. The target selection supported this interpretation. All 8 Noor missiles were aimed at the minesweeping formation, the British vessels. Not a single missile was directed at USS Laboon. Sources with knowledge of the intelligence assessment described this as deliberate. Iran calculated that striking British ships, or forcing Britain to expend expensive interceptors defending those ships, would generate domestic political pressure in London to withdraw from the operation. Fracture the coalition from within. Make the cost of participation unacceptable to a British public already skeptical of military commitments in the Gulf. It was a sophisticated strategy, and for a period, it appeared to be working. Within hours of the engagement, news of the missile attack reached Parliament. The Ministry of Defense confirmed that Royal Navy vessels had been fired upon in the Strait of Hormuz. The confirmation triggered an immediate political firestorm. Opposition leaders demanded an emergency debate. Several backbench MPs from the government's own party publicly questioned why British minesweepers were operating in range of Iranian coastal batteries without adequate diplomatic cover. The Prime Minister addressed the Commons the following day. The statement was carefully worded. It confirmed the engagement, praised the performance of HMS Diamond and the Sea Viper system, and emphasized that no British personnel had been harmed. It did not mention how close the 8th missile had come to HMS Chiddingfold. It did not disclose the ammunition expenditure, and it did not address the intelligence failures that had allowed Iran to mine the strait undetected in October. If you've been following this story and want more reconstructions of the operations defining this decade, subscribe now and comment Hormuz below. Our next video examines the underwater mine warfare technology that makes clearance operations so dangerous and so slow. Behind the scenes, the operational picture was more complicated than Downing Street acknowledged. The after-action assessment, portions of which were shared with the Intelligence and Security Committee, identified several critical issues. First, the Samson radar aboard HMS Diamond had detected the missile launch within seconds, but the system had been optimized for higher altitude threats. The Noor's extremely low flight profile, 15 meters, barely above wave height, pushed the radar's sea clutter discrimination algorithms to their limits. In calmer sea states, detection might have occurred 1 to 2 seconds later. Those seconds mattered. Second, the Aster 15's performance was strong, but not perfect. 5 out of 6 missiles hit their targets. The one miss was attributed to the Noor's terminal jinking maneuver, a relatively simple countermeasure that Iranian engineers had likely refined based on analysis of previous Western air defense engagements. This suggested Iran was adapting its missile technology based on observed coalition capabilities. Third, the coalition's intelligence preparation had failed to identify the specific IRGC battery that conducted the launch. Post-engagement satellite imagery revealed that the Noor launchers on Qeshm Island had been positioned inside modified shipping containers, virtually indistinguishable from the hundreds of commercial containers stored at the island's port facilities. The launchers had been hidden in plain sight. Fourth, and most concerning, ammunition sustainability. HMS Diamond had expended 6 of her 48 Sea Viper missiles in a single engagement. If Iran conducted similar salvos on a daily basis, Diamond would exhaust her magazine within 8 engagements. Reloading Sea Viper at sea is not possible. the ship would need to withdraw to a port facility. The nearest capable facility was in Bahrain, requiring at least 36 hours for transit and rearming. During that window, the minesweepers would be covered only by USS Laboon and the carrier's F-35Bs, a capable but less layered defense. The Americans recognized this vulnerability immediately. Within 72 hours of the March 16th engagement, the Pentagon ordered USS Gettysburg, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser carrying 122 vertical launch cells, to detach from the Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group in the Arabian Sea and reinforce the Hormuz escort screen. Additional Patriot batteries were deployed to coastal positions in Oman and the UAE to provide overlapping coverage of the strait's southern approaches. The mine clearance operation continued. HMS Chiddingfold and HMS Middleton returned to work on March 17th, less than 24 hours after the attack. By March 19th, they had cleared an additional 12 mines. The corridor was approximately 40% complete. Iran did not launch again, but the Noor batteries remained deployed. Satellite imagery confirmed that additional launchers had been moved to Abu Musa Island and Siri Island, extending the potential threat envelope across a wider area of the strait. Tehran was making clear that it retained the option to strike at any time. The strategic consequences of March 16th extended far beyond the immediate tactical engagement. Within the NATO alliance, reactions diverged sharply. The United States reaffirmed full commitment to the clearance operation and publicly praised British resolve. France offered to deploy a frigate and a minesweeper, but attached conditions that effectively delayed their arrival until April. Germany issued a statement expressing concern and calling for renewed diplomatic engagement with Tehran. Turkey, a NATO ally with its own complex relationship with Iran, refused to comment publicly. The coalition was holding together, but barely. At the United Nations, Iran's ambassador described the missile launch as a defensive response to what he called illegal military operations in Iranian territorial waters. The claim was contested. The minesweeping corridor ran through internationally recognized shipping lanes, not Iranian sovereign waters, but it provided diplomatic cover for nations reluctant to condemn Tehran. Oil markets reacted with predictable violence. Brent crude spiked to $142 per barrel on March 17th, before settling to $136 by week's end. Shipping insurers imposed additional surcharges on all Gulf-bound traffic. Several major tanker operators suspended Hormuz transits entirely, diverting their fleets around Africa. The economic pressure was building on all sides. On the West, to clear the corridor faster. On Iran, to justify the economic damage its own actions were inflicting on global energy markets. On Gulf states, caught between their dependence on the strait and their fear of direct confrontation with Tehran. Inside the Pentagon, planners began developing contingency options for a wider campaign against Iran's coastal missile infrastructure. The options ranged from targeted strikes on identified Noor batteries to a broader suppression campaign against IRGC naval bases along the Iranian coastline. The carrier HMS Queen Elizabeth and her F-35Bs were incorporated into these contingency plans, a fact that Downing Street was informed of but did not publicly acknowledge. The question no one in Washington or London could answer definitively was whether Iran would fire again. The intelligence community's assessment was divided. One faction argued that the March 16th salvo was a one-time demonstration designed to establish deterrence and extract political concessions. Another faction warned that Iran was staging for a sustained interdiction campaign, with multiple salvos planned to coincide with the most vulnerable phases of the mine clearance timeline. As of the most recent reporting, the corridor remains approximately 40% cleared. Coalition forces continue operations under escort. HMS Diamond and USS Laboon maintain their defensive positions. The Noor batteries on Qeshm Island remain active, and the fishing boats continue their patrols. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 nautical miles wide at its narrowest point. The navigable channels are far narrower. For 30 years, the world's economy has flowed through those channels on the assumption that no nation would be reckless enough to close them. That assumption is being tested now, every day, in real time. And the 22 minutes on March 16th, when a Type 45 destroyer and an Arleigh Burke-class ship held their ground against 8 inbound cruise missiles while minesweepers worked behind them, may be the engagement that defines whether the strait stays open or doesn't. One thing is certain. The 8th missile landed 400 meters from HMS Chiddingfold, 400 meters from the first Royal Navy combat loss in over 40 years. 400 meters